I am ready. Please proceed.
Jennifer Oakes, Interim Chief Operating Officer, and I'm here today to ask the State Board to certify the monthly entitlements that are calculated pursuant to the School Finance Act. And so this is the third time this fiscal year I've come before you. Normally, this would be the last time, but I will have to come back in April because the supplemental bill is in process right now. And as it's written currently, the supplemental will decrease the budget stabilization factor by let me think of the right number, 5.9 million. And so that will cause us to recalculate it and bring you back new entitlements at that time. Okay. And so we'll be back then. But this, today, this is for you to certify the monthly entitlements from January to June, with the caveat that the supplemental will adjust that. And that, again, the entitlements are the end result of the school finance calculations. Then there's some adjustments that are made pursuant to district requests or the state treasurer requirements that then end up in the monthly payments that go out to the districts.
Great, thank you.
So, any questions?
Do I have a motion, please?
I move to certify the payments to school districts for the Public School Finance Act of 1994 as amended. State share of the total program in the monthly amount of $337,918,646.31 for January through June 2018.
I second that.
Proper motion. Thank you for the second. Do you want to tell me about the 31 cents or not? Sorry.
No, but I will. Let me look. The 31 cents, is that on the bottom?
That's the
Oh.
last.
That is,
That's
yeah,
how it came
it's
out.
just how it came out, and so we try to be as exact as we can.
I keep wondering when you're talking about millions
It's a
of
penny
dollars.
candy for the
Penny
board.
candy,
Candy for
okay.
the board.
Any questions, folks?
That's right.
Do you have a question? Board Member Rankin?
Yes, Ms. Oakes, on the swap adjustment, I hope I'm talking about the charter intercept adjustment and the monthly entitlement. I'm looking at Pueblo 60 and Pueblo 70.
Okay.
It just seems like those numbers are large, and the charter intercept adjustment, is that making up for the mill levy overrides that couldn't be raised there by any chance? I'm not quite sure what that's about.
So what the charter intercept adjustment is, those are funds that are withheld and paid to the state treasurer for the payment of debt service on charter school bonds.
Okay.
And so that's a number that we get from the state treasurer, so those were bonds issued
And are
on
those
behalf of the-
taken out of that monthly entitlement?
Yes, so
And, okay.
we sort of take it out of there and distribute it directly to the state treasurer.
I get it, I get it. And I guess, okay. You know, one thing, if you did this again, I would love to see the pupil numbers next to that. You know, just another column. I know it's easy to do, but that would have been helpful when we're looking at some of the big numbers. I know it's big districts, but
As long as you don't go off the page.
No,
'Cause
but
when you
there's
get
a
to
little
page
space.
2, it's
There's
just-
space there.
there's
She
space.
can move those columns over.
Yep.
Thank you
We can
very
do
much.
that.
Any other questions? Ms. Cordial, since this is big money, would you be kind enough to call the vote?
Of course. Board Member Durham?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff?
Yes.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Rankin?
Yes.
And Board Member Schroeder?
Yes, thank you.
That motion passes 6-0.
Yeah, the next item is 12.13, which was taken from the consent agenda. Oh. Would you like to make some motions, please?
Yeah, let me try
Board
a
Member Rankin?
motion,
For
Ms.
1202?
Cordial. Do we need to do one at a time, or
Yep.
can we?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, I approve the agenda
Yep.
as stated, including item 1202, which was removed, and,
No, we just want the motions for those.
Yeah, I think just vote on, it would just be pulling that language from the consent agenda, since that's the direction you all want to go, but voting on them individually rather than adding them back onto the consent
Oh.
agenda.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve these items that were originally on the consent agenda. 12.02, 12.05, and 12.13, and
So go to page 5.
something's wrong.
Let me give it to you.
There's a specific motion
Here we go.
I know, I was trying to find it, I didn't do well.
to the case.
1202.
Oh, I see, each one. Regarding disciplinary proceedings concerning a license, charge number 2012 EC 1228, direct department staff and the staff attorney general's office to prepare the documents necessary to request a formal hearing for the revocation of the credential holder's Colorado professional teacher license pursuant to section 24-4-104 CRS.
Beautiful.
Proper motion, do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Board Member Durham?
No.
Board Member Flores?
No.
Board Member Goff?
No.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Rankin?
No?
Board Member Schroeder?
Yes.
So that motion fails 3 to 2. So do you need an alternative motion, or do we just leave that alone?
I do need an alternative motion to issue.
Okay. So, wasn't expecting that. Let me see what the alternative motion would be. I think the alternative motion would be to just ask staff
Except,
to,
Issue the license.
just issue the license? Okay,
Dismiss and issue the license.
okay.
do you want me to
So
do it
it-
again? Regarding disciplinary proceedings concerning a license, charge number 201, 2EC 1228, direct department staff and the state attorney general's office to accept,
To, I think to dismiss the,
Dismiss the charge. and
dismiss the
issue
charge and
license.
issue the
Dismiss-
license.
the charges and issue the license for Colorado professional teacher license pursuant to section 24-4-104 CRS.
Mr. Durham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we were to request more information on this, on the facts of this case on an executive session, can that information be had absent the hearing by the hearing officer?
To answer it directly, no. It would have to go to the hearing officer for any other decisions. What you can have more, I mean, there's police records, additional information that way that we could certainly provide.
So there's more information that we either did have or could have had. Was it, since I didn't get on board docs, I don't know if there were medical reports or other things
We do not receive those.
but could you receive those? You could not?
As long as they're in the custody of either law enforcement or the district attorney's office, will be able to, in terms of authority to go directly to a healthcare provider, we would not.
No, but I mean,
But again,
they would be should be part of a police report. I'd like to make a substitute motion this matter lay over until the March meeting of the Board of State Board of Education.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we're going to vote on the amendment first? I don't,
I made a
Substitute,
She made a
so-
motion.
I made a substitute motion.
substitute motion.
So it's just voting on, Board Member Durham.
So we're voting to lay this over another month.
Correct.
Correct.
I'm fine with that. Call the roll, please.
Okay. Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Okay, that motion to lay over this item until the March agenda passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Regarding disciplinary proceedings concerning an authorization and an application, charge number 2017-EC482, direct department staff and the state attorney general's office to prepare the documents necessary to request a formal hearing for the revocation of the credential holder's interim authorization and direct department staff to issue a notice of denial and appeal rights to the applicant pursuant to Section 24-4-104 CRS.
Mr. Durham, do you want to lay this one over as well?
I'd like to make a substitute motion to lay this matter over until the March meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Would you like me to call the roll?
Yes. I'm not sure which one you're calling the roll on. I get
On the
confused on there too.
substitute
On the substitute motion,
motion.
okay.
So the substitute motion to delay this item also over to the March
Right.
meeting. Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Moving right along. Board Member Rankin?
Okay. Approve the nine initial emergency authorization requests as set forth in the published agenda.
It's a proper motion. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Board Member Rankin, you have some questions about this?
Yes, I wanted to make it clear, it seems like we have a lot of these, and exactly what are these for this month? There's 5 for counselor. Where does that money come from? And 4 that are interpretive language?
So the school counselors, and thank you for the question, the school counselors, most of them are tied to the School Health Partnership Grant, and so those are where the funds that are coming from. Thank you. One of them is not tied to that, and it's just an emergency counselor that comes from local education funds. The rest of the educational interpreters are actually our educational interpreters for the deaf and hard of hearing. Those individuals are often difficult to find and often leave sometimes mid-year. Each one of those are local district hires at their will. So
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
So they get an emergency license for possibly 2 years, 1
They-
year and then a renewal. In that time period, what opportunities do these folks have to actually have a license so that we fulfill that need?
the emergency authorization actually requests that they enter into an alternative program if they're going to extend it. Many of them in the middle of the year can't quite get into it. That's why they get the emergency license. The intent of it is that they then move over into an alternative or a traditional pathway for educator preparation.
Okay. And then I think that I previously asked the question, which is, what or where are the counselor prep programs? And as I recall, there are not too many and there aren't any online.
That is correct, and I apologize, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. I'll
It's
look
okay.
that up. I do have a memo for that I'm happy
Right.
to resend. And there are not that many counselor programs, and there are none online right now. And it is specific to school counselors. So most of the folks that we have on this list are clinical counselors that are entering into a school counseling or mental health opportunity.
Is that different?
Under
In
school
terms of
health-
in terms of the licensing, is that different?
We don't actually have any mental health counselor. It is all school counselor. So the clinical pathway often is for a specific reason, whether it's mental health instead of academic and mental health.
I think I'm trying to understand what happens after these folks have an alternative license in a secondary, not an alternative, but a temporary and then a renewal. Are they any better prepared, or do they then have the credentials?
In some cases, yes, and in some cases, no. It's really a case-by-case situation, because some are truly just filling a hole for 4 or 5 months, and then they are choosing whether they can get into a program or not. And then some are just waiting for their program to get started so that they can enter in. So it
Okay.
kind of depends on that trajectory. According to the statutes and where emergency is, we authorize them with an emergency license, or we make a recommendation for an emergency authorization based off of the fact that they are going to enter into an educator preparation program in order to get a renewal as they move forward.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's a fairly expensive education. Am I wrong?
School counselors?
School counselors?
I don't really
Is it a
know the
2-year
numbers.
program? Is it a
School counselors are a 4-year program.
4-year program?
There are 4-year programs, and even to enter into an alternative preparation program, they would require a bachelor's degree.
And then after a bachelor's degree, how long is it? Do you know?
It is completely depends, yeah, on the program and what they're bringing in. It is a 4-year program if you start from the very beginning, so if you're a
Right.
traditional candidate, it's just a 4-year program, Usually they can do it in less than 2 years if they have a bachelor's entering into an alternative program. Many of them enter in as clinical counselors already, and then are just receiving kind of the school counselor aspects.
Okay, and then it's considerably shorter. Okay.
University of Texas has one for 1 year.
Board Member Durham?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks for bringing this.
Are these
I did that a couple of weeks.
counselors, school counselors at least used to denote, perhaps in addition to behavioral kinds of questions, they dealt with career kinds of questions. So is the training differential between a clinical counselor, someone who's really has the behavioral piece but not the career piece? So is the answer to that yes, generally?
The answer is yes. The answer to that question is that's kind of what differentiates them
So
at this
that's the
moment.
differentiation. So in many ways, in terms of at least the health of the student, the clinical counselor is in fact better qualified, at least on paper, to deal with those issues because they have not had time diverted to deal with career issues. So they've dealt strictly with clinical behavior issues. So in some ways, the point is we're not jeopardizing students' health. We may not be getting the career counseling that's supposed to be part of the package. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know that I can speak particularly to everybody's situation,
Yeah.
but they do definitely they come in with more mental health. They
Right.
work for their school counseling and some of the specific aspects of educational.
And then they pick up
Counseling,
some of
they
the
can-
balance. But we're not jeopardizing anybody's health with these temporary licenses.
I don't believe so at all.
Thank you.
We need to take a vote on that, right? There's a motion on the floor and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Of course. Board Member Durham?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff?
Yes.
Board Member McClellan?
Yes.
Board Member Rankin?
Thank you for coming back, yes.
And Board Member Schroeder?
Yes.
Thank you, that passes unanimously.
Our next item, item 13, charter school waiver request submitted by Boulder Valley School District RE2 on behalf of Peak to Peak Charter School. Commissioner, I think this is my fault, but go ahead
Yeah.
and tee it up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is your fault. No, I'm just kidding. No, this is a charter waiver request that the chair did ask us to put on a vote because it's a little bit different than a waiver that you've received in the past. So this is a new charter waiver request, and so the chair asked us to provide a little bit of information and give you guys time to discuss it. So I'm going to turn this over to Bill Cottonsteady, and he's going to take the lead, but you know Melissa Kolsman is also here too, since the waiver relates to her content area.
Great, thank you so much. I put some notes together, so I'll just go through them, and feel free to interrupt me whenever you want to ask questions. So the context of this waiver request is Peak to Peak has applied for 2 waivers from statute. The first one, 22-7-1014-2A, is a common waiver request that you've seen about the school having the flexibility to establish their own school readiness assessment. And then the second one, 22-7-1019, the subparagraph 4, is reporting of data from a school, the reporting of data from the school readiness assessment. And this is scheduled for discussion because although the state has currently approved 95 charter schools on a waiver allowing the school to choose their own assessment, which started in the summer of 2015, this is the first request by a charter school to waive the reporting requirement. So why is this the first request of a reporting waiver? In your packet, so let me grab that just to reference. It's this document here, which you've probably seen before. You have a document related to kindergarten school readiness data reporting. It specifies that in March of 2016, the state board voted to adopt a system for reporting school readiness data. The system calls for districts to submit only aggregate readiness data, not by domain, but by the number of domains in which students demonstrate readiness as illustrated in the sample table. So like how many of your students had 1 out of 4 domains, or 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6. With adoption of the format, statewide data reporting was then scheduled for an initial collection this fall of 2017. So the first collection happened just recently. Thus, districts and schools were only recently asked to report this information to the state. The implication is we received questions from the field about the reporting requirement. The most relevant questions for today were, can this reporting requirement be waived? And what if we specified a replacement plan with 4 domains instead of 6? I'll go into that a little later. But at this time, we did not see this section of statute as non-waivable. So schools can request the waiver, which is why it's up for your consideration today. So one other item of note is about the 4 domains versus the 6 domains. And so in CAP for K, it's off to the side here on this document. School readiness, the way that we look at it includes physical well-being and motor development, social and emotional development, language and comprehension development, cognition, and general knowledge. Many schools that came before you, of the 95 that have been approved, proposed replacement plans with 4 domains. Those were physical well-being and motor development, social and emotional development, language and comprehension development, and then cognition and general knowledge as a single domain. And then when the state adopted the data reporting format, the state adopted 6 domains, which again, you'll know the first 4, physical well-being and motor development, social and emotional development, language and comprehension, cognition, and then for general knowledge, it was broken out into math and literacy. So cognition and general knowledge was treated as one domain by many charter schools. Literacy was often measured as part of language and comprehension, so they put their literacy assessment in the language and comprehension part of the waiver. And general knowledge may have included other subjects like science and social studies. So what will a charter school do if it is implementing a replacement plan with 4 domains? And this is kind of where some of the implications of today's decision will come in. Is they've had a little bit of experience this past year because no school has requested the waiver, and so they participated in the original data collection. And we'll know in the coming months what the data looks like in terms of the variability. It's not available right now to analyze. And without a reporting waiver, they may have to modify their systems to collect the data in the format requested by the state. So that's what I have for you right now, and open for questions.
So you don't know what the effect of this, of the 2 methods, one 4 domains and one 6, you don't know what the reporting effect will be?
So what we did with the this first collection is we communicated to the field that says, we understand that many of you may have been collecting data under 4 domains, and we want you to give it your best effort to report in the format that has been requested by the state, and recognize this as a learning process in this first year. And so we'll see how the schools transmitted the data. They may have said, well, we had 4 out of 6 domains because we had 4 that were measured. Others may have said, well, that 4th domain, they were ready or they weren't. And so maybe we either included it for the 6 or as part of the 4. And we'll do some analysis as that information comes in.
Ms. Colesman, Dr. Colesman, could you comment on what effect, I mean, my first reaction ought to be we ought to see the effect this has on districts, this request for information. But do you have some comments or concerns?
To clarify, are you asking about the issue about the number of domains, or are you asking more about the reporting requirement as a whole? I'm sorry.
How much would it confuse if we allowed 2 different domains to be reported? Two different types,
right.
2 different sets. Thank you.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, I think that would be problematic because of the confusion between whether or not we call out cognition separately from general knowledge. And the assessments that have been approved by the board do have a domain that is separate for cognition, and to distinguish between cognition and general knowledge. Cognition typically are thinking skills like cause and effect. So they're neutral of content, whereas general knowledge is about a content area. And each of the assessment tools have general knowledge kind of content in the different subject areas. And so in order to kind of not have, to think through the general knowledge kind of component and not have to have onerous reporting in every single content area, we propose that it would just be in literacy and math, which are kind of the two primary areas where educators are typically focusing. So to further with this, I do believe that it's possible for some adjustment time for folks in charters around this piece. We know that in the first year or two of any collection, there's variability, and people are getting used to reporting and getting used to measuring new kind of areas. So we expect that there will be, some variability over time. As folks kind of get used to it, and we'll start to see kind of more kind of consistency in reporting.
Thank you.
And I'll add that in this first collection, we were aware of some difficulties, but for the most part, we didn't hear too much from the field, and so they were able to report information.
So it seems to me there might be fundamentally two issues here. One, when we grant a waiver, we expect a replacement plan. And in my mind, I'm not able to figure out a replacement plan for just plain old not reporting. Right? If you don't
Right.
share the information with the state, I don't know what the replacement plan is. For them to just say they're going to keep track of it, which is what is in their report, doesn't help us at all. So that's kind of the first issue for me. But then the other one is, how difficult are we making it for districts to not be allowed to have some variation in the way that they measure school readiness? And were those replacement plans where everything got kind of pushed together, were those inadequate based on the information that we believe needs to be collected?
Yeah, and one thing that I'll add to how that kind of happened was, and this is my understanding, not having been at the state when this first came out, is charter schools sought the waiver when the first requirement came out, which was to administer the readiness assessment. And so they came out in 2015, but then since the collection tool wasn't adopted until 16, the replacement plans looked sufficient at the time. And now with the domains identified, we've sought to communicate to schools as new innovation or readiness plans come in, that there's this 6 domain element that if you're going to report information, then we would like to see in your replacement plan an alignment to the 6 domains.
So in the legislation for reporting, was there a requirement that there be a report on the 6 domains? Was it specific?
Well, that's where it has this kind of, the language was, like, I'll say the Oxford comma issue, where cognition and general knowledge was stated, and so some charter schools interpreted that to mean one domain, whereas we've looked at it as, and I think in the field, is cognition is separate from general knowledge.
I'm sorry.
Board Member Durham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think any of you think back, this was a significant controversy some time ago. And I just read the statute, and depends what the definition of "and" is, I think, to figure out. But I think any fair reading of the statute would say there are 4 domains that we're required to collect, and that a 4 measure would meet the requirement of the statute. And I guess, if you remember back, the reason that there was so much objection to this was the whole question of data privacy. How secure is this data? Was it being sent out? A lot of this assessment was being done by a company. And I think if you don't keep the reason why this was controversial in mind, then it's easy to say, well, there's no difference between 4 and 6, but I think we generally preferred that since these are very young children collecting data that can last a very long time, that perhaps less was better than more, was the reason we settled on. And I don't know if we ever resolved this, but it would appear that somehow we've expanded by rule or by practice, what we could easily interpret in the statute as being 4, we've expanded it to 6. And I think it makes more sense to, frankly, to go to 4 rather than 6. I'd be happy to read the statute if somebody'd like to hear it, but.
No,
Yeah.
no, I mean, not right now.
Yeah, I can understand. I don't want to read it either.
Good.
So,
Is it possible to compress, for those districts that are reporting it as 6, is it possible to compress that to 4? Do you get where I'm going?
So you're saying, should we
I'm trying
change
to
the
get some
reporting?
useful information.
Right. So, currently, because of the reporting system as adopted, meaning that there's no names to the domains, we just have the number of domains in which students are showing readiness. We have worked extensively with the publishers of the assessments for them to produce the type of report that would be easy for districts. So if, the type of work that districts would have to do to report in the way that was adopted is quite challenging. And so to go back right now and compress from the 6 domains that were approved to 4 would require a significant change to both our kind of data system, as well as we would need to kind of work back again with the vendors. So that you're aware, we had funding, some grant funding that actually allowed us to pay that cost on behalf of districts, so that the assessment system that districts are using would be able to kind of essentially, feed that system, feed that data directly to the department. We kind of have to go back and rework that, and that would require some funding in order to do that.
Okay. I'm trying to problem solve here, which is not actually my job, but
when did we go from 4 to 6, or we'd always been 6?
no, we've always been 6, but when some, is it only charters that have come up with the 4? And the
That's
districts,
correct.
and the districts
That's
that had replacement plans stayed with 6?
Yes.
Is
So
this
I'm-
the first one?
On the
first one
reporting.
on reporting. No, it's the first one that's coming to us and saying, we don't want to report.
At all?
We have, 95 that have 4?
Well, we have 95 that have waivers, and I don't have the numbers in terms of how many specified 4 domains versus 6
I'm
or
trying
7.
to figure out why it has to be a horrible problem. If we have the districts that use 6 domains move forward as planned, and those districts that don't, we should watch any further waivers we grant, but those districts that only have 4 still report, but it's a whole separate piece of information. Is that
Yeah,
completely
well,
unrealistic?
and I'll say, I think where I see the implication is if you grant the waiver, I would anticipate you're gonna see quite a few additional waivers coming in from.
To not report?
Primarily, correct.
Oh, no, yeah, I'm not even talking about that.
They're not
I'm-
asking to not report.
they are, Steve.
They're asking to report 4.
Nope.
No, so,
Steve,
Peak to Peak's request is to waive out of the reporting requirement,
completely.
because,
Would the state law require we have to issue a report to the legislature
correct,
that says ready or not ready.
correct.
And our report is not, do we report to the legislature by domain, or can we issue the report just ready, not ready, overall?
So the reporting system that the board adopted is kind of outlined kind of in that handout that Mr. Cottonsteady provided. And that's the format of the data that was actually in that most recent CAP4K report. So we needed to report by by state overall, the readiness of kindergarteners, and then we were instructed to disaggregate that for particular groups, gender, race, ethnicity.
And that's in the
free
statute, as
reduced
I
lunch.
recall.
Right.
This is all aggregated data, so we're
It's
not
all
dealing with
aggregated.
the worries that we had before, because the data remains at the district level. We don't get
That's
any of
correct.
the specific
Correct.
data.
But I think part of the question was, though, or at least what triggered the initial debate was that the districts were not very good at protecting this data, and that the vendors involved were less than
Right.
stellar. And I don't know whether any of those, so our,
Those issues should have been resolved now with this new legislation that we had last year.
so
Yeah.
do we know if
There's-
that's the case?
So it's my understanding on this report, essentially the charter school receives a spreadsheet that looks like the table, and they would just provide aggregated data. So we have 100 students in kindergarten.
But they're getting the data from,
Yeah, so
either
they would-
from their
they would
own,
pull it from their
from their
local
own
source.
assessment or from the vendor, if they're using a vendor assessment.
Correct, yeah. But they would be populating a separate file
Right, no, I
not
understand.
connected to the system.
But these people don't, I just want to have it straight, that these people don't want to
So,
provide it at all.
yeah, so they're
Correct.
seeking the waivers to say that we would not, we are requesting not having to submit the report to the state. And as a replacement, they will aggregate the information and use it to assess how their students are doing trend-wise with their student readiness.
But we have an affirmative obligation to report to the General Assembly.
Yes. Yeah, so they're requesting that statutory piece to say that we would like a waiver not to transmit that data,
Period.
right?
So
So
I
we
see-
would still be able to submit a report, it would not have peak-to-peak data as part of the.
And shortly thereafter, it would not have an awful lot of districts.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if we grant this, I still see this as two things. One, it's not okay with me not to report,
Okay,
but it seems to me that more work needs to be done on how the reporting should occur, as we have had some districts who have waivers and have their own replacement plan, and their information is different. And I don't know that it's deadly that their information is different. It just becomes a separate part of our report to the legislature. I don't know if you guys agree with that interpretation. I don't know that I'm ready to go back to the
Yeah.
districts that have just 4 and say, you must do 7.
And-
Unless there's, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you must do 6. Where did I get 6?
And, yeah, and what I would, if the board voted against this request today with a level of indication that we're not gonna entertain this waiver request, then my communication to the field would say, so because the state has adopted a 6-domain report, you have time to prepare how you will collect this information moving forward and submit it as part of the fall collection. And then there would be a level of technical assistance that we'd provide.
So you would force them to 6
Well,
domains?
we would say that this is the adopted report, and so although you have the waiver, you also have to participate in this data collection. It would be a little hard to figure out what exactly that prescriptive language would be, especially given that they have waivers in place right now that are valid until the time of renewal of their contracts. But we would say, if you find yourself in this space, we encourage you to measure on 6 domains and report that information.
And I don't know if I'm there yet.
Okay.
I'd like you to do some brainstorming on that one, whether it's critical that that all the reporting is on 6 domains. Can we not have 2 different, as districts have adopted? I mean, maybe going forward, we don't grant any waivers of this type unless they're measuring the 6 domains, because we see that as important. But we didn't do that before, and I don't know that I want to, I'm not ready to go back and force the districts to do it
Well, to
differently.
relitigate, it could be
I
litigated.
don't know. Mr.
since we-
Durham, help me with this, please.
Well, I just, I
And I
mean,
don't know how many,
we've granted waivers not just to charter schools, but to a number of whole districts.
yeah, but they all use 6 according to Ms. Colesman.
But
So there's just a few
all
of
of their
them.
replacement plans were 6. Now, we have some approved charter school replacement plans that are 4.
Correct. And I think that in the peak to peak, and that was one of the reasons why I brought it up today, is the way I see their replacement plan is currently drafted is with 4 domains. And so.
Oh,
like,
we can
on
go
the
back to
front end-
them then and
Right.
say, pick 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
we
but-
had not approved theirs yet.
Correct.
But why would we? I mean, we were approved 4 for other charter schools, why
Well,
wouldn't we?
because
I
we're
mean,
learning.
No, I don't think I don't think we're learning at all, Dr. Schroeder. And I hate to say this, I hate to be critical, but I think it should be clear that there is significant concern about over-collection, over-reporting, putting more requirements on schools, on districts that are not statutorily required. Quite clearly, we could just as easily interpret the statute, in fact, I think it's a better interpretation of the statute that it's 4, not 6, but I will agree that it's a close call. So when in doubt, we should be putting fewer requirements on districts. I don't see what the heck we think we're learning by adding these other 2. I don't think we're learning anything of value, because remember, the legislature only cares about one thing. Is the kid ready for kindergarten, or isn't the kid ready for kindergarten? Or first grade, whichever, first grade, right? First grade?
It's kindergarten.
Kindergarten. Is the kid ready or not? So, as far as I'm concerned, you only need one box, ready or not ready. We've had this debate how many times?
We've not agreed on it either.
No.
Well, we may not agree on it, but I think,
But the other replacement was almost as good or as good as the 6. And this one is not. That was the
Well, but
difference, is that they had 6 categories.
we know, but we've approved some that only have 4.
Do you know
How
how many?
many?
Do you know how many?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how many we've approved with only 4?
I don't. I'd have to go back and look at them individually.
I'd move that this lay over until we can get that information. Then that'll be my motion at the appropriate time.
And I'll say in terms of process that the board, I believe, and I'm going to be kind of citing, but
You're correct.
You have 60 days
Yes.
to make a decision up or down. So if you were to approve, it would happen. If you deny, you can provide a reason for the denial, and then this charter school could come back and present a new proposal. If you lay over after 60 days, it would take effect.
And
I know
so-
that.
Is it, but is it 60 days?
You didn't have to tell them.
All right.
Do we have to the next meeting to bring this back?
No.
I think we'd be within the 60 days. I mean, like, we'd be outside of the 60 days.
Outside
on
the
that
60
one.
days?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
In that case, we probably should deny.
So we're
Both of
forced to
them.
make a decision
forced to
based
make a
on
decision.
incomplete and likely inaccurate information.
Well, I don't know.
I understand you, I think I understand your concern, Mr. Durham, but this does not prevent them from coming back.
Well,
I definitely, the
What-
reporting piece,
What staff is doing here, and what I really object to, is they are setting the stage to undo policy this board set, one waiver at a time.
and
Is
that's,
that what you're doing?
and that is very.
Yes, it is, because the next time we get a renewal of a charter school contract, you're not going to recommend to this board that we approve the same waiver that we approved to them before, are you? Because it's going to have 4 instead of 6. You can't tell us how many of those are out there.
So, Mr. Durham, just, so we were asked by the chair to bring this to you all. So I do not think that staff are trying to force any one direction. We were asked to put it on the vote for a discussion for you all, so that's what we've done. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with that.
Well,
And that, well,
Until I know whether we approved one of these charter school waivers at 4 or 50 of these charter school waivers at 4, It's going to make a pretty big difference in what the factual,
Mr. Durham,
what
the
this has to do down
problem
the
that's come
road.
forward, or the difference that's come forward, is the reporting. This has not been on anyone's radar, and it has created a concern as to how is an effective way that we can do this with the differences.
It's been on the staff's radar. It's not been on
I
our
call for a
board's radar.
vote.
So I don't know how long it would take you, Bill, to go through those and find out how many are for. Can we do it by today, or
We
not?
could get that information, yeah.
I mean, if you want to hold it
For the end of the day.
for the.
I have to leave in about an hour, so I'm just, for the
I
record.
mean, I think
so.
we just didn't anticipate
We'll vote after
the
that.
exact question of how many.
But
Yeah, and
but- and
I don't
I
think I
would-
was clear on the
Well, and-
4 and the 6.
Could we take a vote?
Not
Well,
while I'm
we're
still
gonna-
debating the issue, no.
Well, I mean, you're one vote,
Well, that's-
Steve.
It's the only vote I got.
Board Member Flores, we want to do the best job we can. I haven't been convinced yet that we can't have reporting for those districts that are 4 and those districts that are 6. I don't know if I want to approve any more 4s.
I agree.
And so I would like to have that information. I would agree with Mr. Durham that if we can get this done today, that would be best. Because otherwise, we're just going to deny it and start the whole thing over again.
Yeah.
So would you be good enough? And we'll just table this for a couple hours?
Okay, yeah, we'll get crunching right away on it.
Can it be
I
done?
won't be here, so for the record, after about 20 minutes of 4.
Well, that provides us with an opportunity.
Yeah, you can vote then.
I'm sorry, sir. I really am.
That's, well.
That's not a
my
setup
sch-
on my part.
My schedule is not your problem, it's my problem, so.
Yes.
I just
Board
would
Member
like to
Rankin.
go back to Ms. Colesman. Would you go through that knowledge base and the other one, putting,
Cognition?
yeah, cognition together versus those two? Because if those are those are two that are part of the 6, but if you can combine those and make those one, that helps bring it down. But,
But there's a problem with, I mean, what she's shown is that is problematic, because
Yeah.
one is based on the knowledge that a child.
I know what they
The
mean.
background,
I-
and the other one is capacity, maybe?
Cognition.
Cognition. They're
Yeah.
very different.
see, I understand that, but I would like her to explain it one more time to see how they can go together quite well for maybe some other board members that might be confused on that.
Me, yeah.
So your question is, how easy would it be to combine those? I would say that it would probably take on the part of the folks who are using an assessment tool that has those all as separate domains, it would take a significant amount of guidance to districts to be able to figure out how to compress those into one. However, I do think it is possible to explore for those charters that are using 4 domains. I think it's possible to solve this less probably from a perspective of changing the whole system for the state and perhaps providing some guidance for districts about or those schools for how they might approach the reporting for 6 if they've approved for 4. I think that's a doable problem to solve. It's probably a whole lot easier to work with those schools that have those individual waivers than it would be to have the entire state change from the adopted system of the 6 domains to 4 domains.
Right.
So I think it's possible to work that, and I think across our 2 teams that would be doable.
And it wouldn't take a lot of time.
I think it would just take some good thinking and some folks just getting together and perhaps even working with some of the schools that are assessing on 4 domains and work with them to see what makes sense, what's reasonable, and what's not onerous.
As it has been now, we have had some schools with 4 and some schools with 6, but there's never been any problem with that.
There's no reporting.
Right, wasn't until this year when
This
the
year.
reporting was the first year for reporting.
And
Thank you, and hurry back,
All right.
please. Thank you very much, sorry. Ms. Cordial, what's next? No,
The next item
14?
is 13.04, the consideration of the motion to dismiss the charter school appeal.
okay. Do I have a motion, and why can't I find this? Oh, here,
You got it?
yeah,
You want me to go?
Yes, please.
Regarding Aurora Public Schools' motion to dismiss the charter school appeal, case number 18-CS-01. I'm not sure if this is the one I want to go to. It's this one, isn't it?
You have a motion to dismiss.
So the
Counselor,
motion.
pay attention to what we're saying, please, because we're confused, and I
The
can't find my.
I'm
First
trying to
motion
pay-
is to grant the district's
Got it.
request to dismiss the motion.
Yep.
Regarding Aurora Public Schools' motion to dismiss the charter school appeal, case number 18-CS-01, Vega Collegiate Academy versus Aurora Public Schools, the motion is granted.
Yeah, the motion to dismiss, yeah, okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Board Member McClellan?
I understand there may be a desire to see the mediation process followed prior to state board involvement. I also understand that time is of the essence for this locally approved school. I hope the board's decision does not represent a sudden death for the school's plans to find appropriate housing for their operation. I know our staff has on occasion accommodated rapid preparation and adjudication for cases like this, and I'd like to ensure that we show that courtesy here in light of the timing challenges of site selection and preparation. With that in mind, I move to amend the motion to direct staff to expedite adjudication of an appeal on this specific issue for this charter applicant or this charter school as rapidly as is practicable should such request come forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I think if, it's the kind of thing that I think if it required a special meeting, once we got to the point of whether this was a drop dead, once the issue gets ripe, if it would require an extra half-day meeting to hear the appeal, might make some sense if it's a deal killer on for the issue. In other words, if the passage of time moots this question, we should do everything necessary to at least make sure they get a fair hearing, rather than allowing the passage of time to moot the hearing.
There's a certain amount of time in the contract. Counselor, do you remember by any chance? I know we don't have any of the facts, but there's a required, this is problematic, this amendment, simply because there's a specific period of time for the
Yeah, and I don't think this,
contract discussions.
and I don't think this amendment would overturn the contract provision.
Because I said practicable.
Yeah. So if the contract provision says 30 days, then this wouldn't I would not interpret this as superseding the contract.
So what are we superseding?
We're simply requesting staff, once that, if the dispute resolution mechanism doesn't resolve the issue, then we're asking staff to expedite getting this issue in front of us.
Right,
And could that be done by?
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I think, at least that's the way I interpreted the motion, I think the way it was made.
Yes.
So, because we can't, and the reason I think we have to vote yes to dismiss the appeal is that, just as a matter of law, they do have to follow their own contractual procedures.
That's right.
So I think all Ms. McClellan is saying is that once that time has run, if there's anything that can be done to bring this issue promptly to this board, it's appropriate to do that.
Right. And
Okay.
if I may
And what I heard is that, like the summer meeting we had, that you would be calling for a special board meeting.
May not be necessary, it's hard to tell. I mean, it could be that it just, that it won't work. I mean, or it could be they'll resolve it, or it could be that, that the timing's gonna be pretty close.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
If I may further clarify.
Sure.
Madam Chair, thank you. I recognize that there may be a degree of elasticity on the slow end or the quick end in terms of how quickly this preparation and adjudication might take place legally and practically. So the intent of my amendment was to indicate that to the extent that it's legal and practicable, that we go on the quicker end of that, so far as we have the capacity to do. And that was my intent, understanding that time is of the essence for this school.
Madam Chair, I don't see that as a problem. It's basically saying you normally would have 60 days, but you're directing staff, tighter briefing schedule, we want to hear it more quickly because it's established with the parties. I don't think that's a problem.
Call a vote on the amendment, please.
Okay. Board Member Durham?
Yes.
Board Member Flores?
Could you maybe go and, can I be last, or,
No, just
No?
do it.
Yeah.
no?
Board Member Goff? Board Member McClellan?
Yes?
Board Member Rankin?
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder?
No.
So because it's tied, I believe that means the motion would fail.
So let's vote on the regular.
Okay. So on the motion to dismiss, Board Member Durham?
No.
Board Member Flores?
Yes.
Board Member Goff? Yes. Board Member McClellan?
No?
Board Member Rankin?
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder?
Yes.
The motion passes. 3-2, sorry. No, I'm sorry.
4-2.
4-2, thank you.
I mean, no disrespect, but I don't think that said anything. I just think that was unhelpful. We're on 14?
Yes.
She was nice to her. Oh, sorry. You're not paying attention. Yeah.
Commissioner, I know you're triple working, but you're on.
Yes, thank you. So we are on commissioner update, right? Okay. So yeah, I have just had several meetings and state visits across the state that I just wanted to highlight. I visited both Cortez School District and the Greeley School District because they're coming before you on the clock. You saw Greeley today. I also did a trip up to Cortez and met with their school and did some site visits there as well. We had a rural council meeting in Peyton, and I will say I know you've heard a lot about the Peyton Widefield partnership with their, their woods manufacturing, cabinet finishing and construction process that they're doing with students, and it's really quite amazing. We did a tour of it with the entire rural council, and it's a hands-on way that kids are getting engaged and getting certified in manufacturing with really high-tech machinery, and it was really inspiring to see, and they've been able to re-engage a set of students that have been disengaged from the school, so that was really exciting. I also went to the CASE conference that I think a few of you went to as well, and met with my superintendent's council there and had a dinner with the superintendent/principals that I mentioned earlier, the superintensibles, as we affectionately call them, and got some feedback from them as well, and that was a good time well spent to understand where they're coming from and the challenges that they face. I think we all went to the Colorado Succeeds lunch a couple days ago, and that was an excellent luncheon with a good keynote speaker, just talking about the rapidly changing environment that we're creating learning environments in, and I think that's important for us to consider. And then also went to the BOCES Directors Quarterly meeting, so I've gotten a lot of face time with superintendents and BOCES directors from across the state over this last month. We had we had an ELC meeting as well, and so the Education Leadership Council is now moving forward to the subcommittee phase and the engagement phase with local communities. And so we are, the governor's office is hammering some of that out with the executive committee there, so there'll be more information coming for your engagement in subcommittees or in subsequent town hall meetings on that work. So that's moving along quite well also. So with that, that's what's kept me busy over the last month.
Thank you. When we have the list of the folks on the subcommittees, will that be posted on the Education Leadership
Yes.
Council website? So if you're interested in following what's going on, there are going to be some new postings
Yeah.
coming up shortly.
And we're still trying to figure out the process, but I would expect that you all would be invited to participate in that subcommittee process. We're just trying to figure out the details of when, what, where, how, all of those pieces before we can send it out.
Board member reports. Mr. Durham, shall we start with you since you're on a tight schedule?
Looks like we're gonna have to kill time if we're ahead of schedule. I did attend the Colorado Succeeds luncheon yesterday. I thought it was a fascinating program. And I thought a number of the issues were in some ways almost depressing in terms of whether there's any chance we can keep up, whether the educational system can keep up with the societal and economic changes that, at least by almost consensus account, are going to be occurring over the next decade. And I think it poses and should give us all an opportunity to think about some of the things that we've been working on, like computer science education and some of those things, and perhaps increases the importance of us pursuing some of that agenda.
Thank you. Board member Flores?
Yes, thank you. I have been attending the Education Committee meetings of the Senate, and I've been impressed with the people that come before the Senate Education Committee speaking for or against bills. And actually the number of people and the knowledge that I have acquired. For instance, I was not aware that in a district such as Denver, which is kind of large and has a large number of poor kids, middle school kids and high school kids do not have, and poor kids do not have the ability to get a hot lunch. So I thought everybody from K through 12, was able, if they were economically, distressed, came from a family, they did not have lunch. As it turns out, my own ignorance was not just me. It's some people even within the department did not know that that was the case. So, I think about the large number of children in Denver, and probably the whole state, that do go without, poor kids, and I'm talking about kids that come from families that are poor, that do not get a hot lunch or a lunch period. So, that's very distressing. And I started thinking about what it was like to be hungry and to go to class, hungry. Or kids who probably are so hungry that maybe they don't even come back after, if they have an open campus, as do many of the high schools in my district. And I think in my district, it may be very different than your districts, but I can only imagine that there are, districts in your areas, even rural, where that's the case. So I was glad that they passed the bill for middle school, but I would like to advocate that we do more. And I can only surmise that we might even be closing the gap if we fed poor kids in schools, K through 12, or preschool through 12. Thank you.
Board member Rankin?
Yeah, I've been working on the research proposal, research proposal requests with Ms. Goff, and we've been sitting down with CDE and talking through some processes that I have found extremely helpful in discussion. And we have so much going on at the board that sometimes we need to streamline more of what we're doing to make sure we understand when we vote on things. And it was very helpful to me. And then I met with Melissa Colesman about streamlining the process, if possible, with the chairwoman for our standards revision and review. And that's still in a working order, but these are just things that we're going to have to do because we have so much work that we have to cover and so much reading that we have to do. I also went to Colorado Succeeds and found out that 70% of the students that graduate cannot qualify for the military, and that was a concern of the speaker there. So that's pretty much what I've done. Thank you.
That's large.
I enjoyed the Colorado Succeeds luncheon, and I had an opportunity to attend kind of a policy seminar on innovation zones in Denver, and that was very interesting at CU Denver. And then I wanted to thank Commissioner Anthus for taking time to listen to all my concerns and myriad questions and providing great input, especially for my updates out with constituents. Because some of the data that we're reporting back is a moving target, and so I appreciate your patience in walking me through that, and also staff for meeting with me, especially this week, for all of the many questions that I had. I appreciate the time that they've taken, so thank you.
Board Member Goff?
Well, briefly, a lot of it's been said. It's the same for me, and maybe, my own perspective. I enjoyed the Colorado Succeeds luncheon quite a bit. That is not what we could say is a brand new topic. All of those points that came up have been mentioned before, and as an aside, years ago, probably somewhere between 6 to 8 years ago, NASB had a pretty deep partnership with the military, and through programs that were in middle and high school level, both primarily ROTC based, were unfortunately faded out, different reasons, some of which were budget cuts, but the fact that the military is not the automatic end-all, take-your-pick option for a lot of families is something that's important to keep our awareness level up out there about this. And when the legislature addressed the notion of military enrollment or enlistment counting as part of our accreditation or performance plan, and the other, the related, not the same, but military spouse licensure, such as that, I think that's another good sign that we're keeping our perspective broad, real, and present time based. I had a chance to spend the better part of a day in one of my districts, and I think if ever the rest of you can, that's probably something that should be something on our priority list once in a while. Particularly in my area right now, there's quite a bit of focus on priority and turnaround, and it's important to learn and pick up what's going on as much as possible. Also have enjoyed my roles in the legislative world this year. It's been interesting. I've appreciated working with Steve on this and coming to you with all of our good news and great feats of grandeur. But I'm also continuing that work with NASB, and I would just say a word of caution to everybody. The president's federal budget proposal came out at the beginning of the week. At the same time, keep in mind that there are several proposals that are put in the works before anything is finished. And this is, there's a version from the Senate appropriations group, there's a version from the House, there's the president's version, and it's hard to say that any one of those can be counted on. There are some general umbrella topics and proposal areas, so be aware of that. There's overall, in general, about not quite $4 billion reduction in the overall U.S. Department of Ed budget. So some things are what's called level funded. They've not been cut or dropped in any way, but they are, and some other programs have been eliminated or cut and reduced. So it's all still it's an unknown where it will end up. I think we can join with the rest of the country in waiting it out, seeing what happens, and having good communication with our Congress representative, our Congress delegation. Let them know what we're thinking. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have some updates coming from the
Up high?
ceiling
Okay.
as they're going through. So as they're going through all of the previous charter waivers that you've approved, most of those are in 4 domains, and we think that's probably because you approved most of those waivers before you had the 6 domains, right? So, many of those waivers have been approved before the reporting requirement of 6 domains started. So, and my team has also said that really we think the decision you have to make right now is just about whether you want charters to report, or this particular charter to report this information or not. We will work it out. If they want to report it in 4 domains, we can work it out. But I think the main question you have before you is, do you want to grant a waiver for reporting?
And do we want to grant, there are 2 waivers they've requested. So
I believe, well,
yeah, there are 2.
okay.
And we can structure it that way.
So the first motion is to approve both of the 2 waivers?
Both waivers, and the second one is just to approve one.
Correct.
Okay.
Just the
So I'd like to
standard
make my board report and make some comments, and
sorry.
then we'll go
I
back to
forgot you
that.
didn't make
That's
your board
okay.
report.
That's okay. I'm invisible. So since the last board meeting, I've actually attended 2 hot lunches, and I guess I just want to talk about them in the sense that the topics at the hot lunches are so often completely different than anything that comes across our reading, et cetera, which is why I like them. Now, the first one wasn't that unusual. It was Superintendent Munn and an individual from, I believe, Texas, Mr. Oliver. They talked about early childhood discipline and talked about whether it should be legislated and what are some of the results, et cetera. It was very interesting. The second one in February, which several of us attended, was about an organization called a Master Transcript Consortium. And that was really quite interesting because it addresses the change to mastery learning and the fact that our transcripts don't reflect that at all. And there's a movement to look at, well, what should a transcript look like? And they didn't have exactly an answer, but they had some examples of different ones, and I think there's a real effort by the colleges to accept those kinds of transcripts. And there are one or two high schools in Colorado that are interested in embarking on that. And I think it's an interesting topic because I think it might change the focus that students have on the work they do as well as teachers. I attended what I hope was my last district legislative meeting with St. Vrain since the last meeting. Participated in the Leadership Council, and I'm looking forward to the subcommittee work. I think that'll be really interesting. I also attended that Innovation Zone presentation, and it kind of goes back to my comment I made earlier today that there are some very interesting experiments underway using innovation. And so this particular innovation zone, which is made up right now of 4 DPS innovation districts, actually created another board, a second board. Their school board is still responsible for their district, but they created another board that has 1 school board member on it, but a number of other folks who are working to help these districts. The results from the innovation districts and from this zone in particular are certainly moving the dial and that local control, that true local control at the school level is making quite a difference. I thought it's fascinating. There's a study that went with it, which I have not had a chance yet to read. I also attended the Case Winter Conference. I wish I could remember the name of the main speaker. Can you remember, Katie?
What was
It was the author of the J.D. Vance. And although I had read the book, it was after listening to him speak that I actually understand what his main message was, which is that somehow you can't quite take the country, or they can't take those experiences out of yourself once you move into a different milieu, and how difficult that is. It was fascinating. And I also enjoyed the Colorado Succeeds luncheon, and the thing that I brought with it is that 47% of the jobs that we have today are likely to be automated. And of course, what I saw was my own profession. And I didn't see that state board members would be replaced.
Oh, it'll be long
But-
before
Too bad
that.
you don't get paid.
We got like
Oh,
47 hours.
I forgot about that.
47
So then I
days.
have one or two other things that I would like to talk about. I wanted to explain that this morning when we had our hearing with Billy Martinez Elementary, the staff talked about that it had been my request that there be some background information presented first, and I'm certainly open to feedback from you all. My thought is that we have folks, the public, who either listen to us online or they come back and listen to us on the computer, and I feel that in order for them to have some understanding of what the discussions are among us, that a certain amount of laying the groundwork is helpful. If you disagree, if you think we're wasting time, please let me know. But it was on that basis that I suggested that we have a very short presentation. Why are we doing this? What are some of the basic facts? And then let the district go into their presentation. And I hope you agree, but if not, please let me know. I keep trying to.
I thought it expedited the hearing, actually.
I did too.
Good. I just don't know, sometimes you don't know where to start exactly, and I was hoping that would be helpful. And then very briefly, I just wanted to talk about next month, which is going to come so much sooner than we realize. We're going to vote on the accountability clock pathway for Martinez. We are going to go back to looking at standards in the arts, computer science, and word language standards. And we'll be providing some feedback. We will be getting a report, hopefully if we have time, on progress monitoring, update on the Year 7 schools, the ones that we heard last spring, getting an update on where they are. And then we're going to have some rulemaking hearings on accreditation, educator licensing endorsement, effectiveness. And then also at our March 14 meeting, we will be attending the Rose Dinner in the evening. So we'll have to pay attention to our agenda to make sure we get out of here on time.
What's the date?
March
14th.
14th.
Thank you.
So actually, I'm confident it'll be a 2-day board meeting, but on the
Yes.
night of the first meeting, we'll be attending the Rose Dinner, and that is a dinner with the House and Senate education legislators. And then on March 30th, we'll have another legislative update meeting. Anything else, folks, before we go to, back to the vote?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. So, yes, I would be grateful for a motion.
I hope this is the right one.
It is. You're right.
I move to approve Boulder Valley School District RE2's request for a waiver of CRS Section 22-7-1014, paren 2, paren A, on behalf of Peak to Peak Charter School as set forth in the published agenda. Further, I move to deny Boulder Valley School District RE2's request for waiver of CRS Section 22-7-1019, paren 4, on behalf of Peak to Peak Charter School for the following reasons. It says we have to specify the reasons.
The reporting.
So the reason why you would be denying that portion.
We want them to report.
Oh, I'm sorry. The denial pursuant to CRS Section 22-30.5-105 paren 3 is because we want them to report the results of their assessments.
It's a proper motion, I think. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So essentially, we are approving their waiver for.
Madam Chair?
Oh,
We
I just want
need
to clarify.
split
oh,
this.
I misspoke.
That's not-
I'm sorry, did I say it? I seconded.
You're not seconding it?
No.
Does anybody want to second this? So I think the motion is to approve of their waiver for their assessments that they use for school readiness, but to not approve their request to not report.
Correct.
Do I have a second?
Okay, well then, couldn't we do it point by point?
It's called severing or something.
will
I think it needs to
sever.
be two motions.
All right,
Can you
sever it.
Steve?
It needs to be seconded first, but I will sever it.
Okay.
Well, then second it.
I don't want to second it.
Sever. Which
Sever.
means
I'm going to
separate.
sever, not second.
Somebody has to second it before we can sever. Second. All right, Mr. Durham?
Thank you. I move the motion be bifurcated into its two logical constituents, and that we take a separate vote on each one.
Thank you. I second that.
May I ask you to do that again?
No, you don't need to. No, there's no vote on that. It's any member,
Okay.
any member may,
Okay.
actually, it's not a request. You're entitled to a severance of any motion that could be broken into more than one.
So we just
logical
vote
part.
twice?
That's correct.
Okay.
Board, or, you don't have to.
No, you don't need to read it again.
Apparently.
So-
We just need to vote twice.
So the first
So I
part,
I move it be, actually, I should say where I want it severed,
Parliamentary procedure
probably.
training.
I'd like to have it severed, Madam Chairman,
People.
after, what's the word?
my assumption would be after the first waiver so approving the first waiver of school readiness, school assessments. Then the second part is the denial of the reporting
Correct.
portion. So first, we're voting on approving the assessment. Okay, Board Member Drum.
No, I'm not quite
Oh,
ready.
sorry.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, sure.
So are we approving their assessment that is in 4 parts?
As they presented it.
So we're
Mr. Durham.
allowing them to have an assessment that assesses 4 characteristics, but we're going to effectively, by board policy, deny them the opportunity to report it in 4 parts.
Nope.
No,
No, sir. We-
to report.
They have to report.
They have to report. And staff is going to work with all those districts that have 4 parts.
Is my understanding, Dr. Anthus, incorrect that it appears the staff would like to eliminate 4-part reporting and will start to deny waivers in the future where 4-part reporting, because now this is silent on how they're going to report, it's just they have to report. Apparently, the other waivers that have been granted allow reporting in 4 parts. If I got the distinct impression that the staff doesn't like reporting in 4s, and that I have a very bad feeling we're going to see when these charters come up with their contract renewal, that there will be an attempt to eliminate those provisions. Is that a fair assessment, Dr. Anthony?
So I think there's lots in what you said, so let me try to separate them a little bit. My understanding, we have never approved or denied a reporting waiver. This is the very first reporting waiver that has ever come to you all. So, so what we were saying in the discussion is that if you want to still see them report, we will figure out a way as staff to let them report on their 4 domains, which would probably send a signal to the field and other charters that they could report in their 4 domains as well, and we would figure that out. I think where you were hearing some staff concern is if we revisited the whole discussion of all district school readiness work If you wanted to then collapse the 6 that you already described into 4, and that you heard some consternation about changing that would change something for the entire state when you really just have one charter waiver before you right now. So I think what you're hearing is staff is willing to go to the 4 for charters, for reporting, and we'll figure that out. We've just never had that come before us yet.
Not reporting.
So, it's certainly not the, right now you send out a form that has 6 fields in it. I presume that without a waiver that allows you to report for, you can send that form back and deem it inadequate and demand that it be submitted in the 6 form, in the 6 field format.
No.
What is to prevent staff from doing that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So if, let's just say hypothetically, you were to,
Well, let me try and rephrase it. Okay. Apparently, and when we don't have the answer because staff's not back, but apparently in some of the waivers for charter schools, their replacement plan specifically talked about reporting 4. So the form that you have doesn't fit them, but you can't compel them to report in more than 4 because they have a waiver. This school does not have a waiver, any kind of waiver from reporting, and therefore you can force them to report in 6, although you say you're not going to do that. And I would like to know where this board made the policy of 6 as opposed to 4, which is what set me off when, is I think this board did everything we could to try and make sure that this was a minimal burden, not a maximum burden. And then we turn around and we've got 6, somehow 6 has become the default.
so we can first of all go back and make sure that all those decisions are clear for you. Around when the board made the decision on 6 domains. I think
Do you think there was a vote on 6?
I do think there was.
Yeah.
I believe, I remember about 9 meetings on this.
Yeah, I thought that was more than that.
And there were it was very controversial, you're right, but I do believe that the staff have worked out the wishes of that vote at 6. I do not believe we added any more domains than what the board voted on several years ago. So yes, I think because this is the first time ever that a waiver has come before you on the reporting requirement, just the reporting requirement, in the dialogue, we said, we'll make it work. If you guys want to see it reported, but you know you've already approved, 90 some charters for 4 domains, and Bill was texting me saying that all the ones he's gone through has basically been 4 domains, so we think it's a very high percentage, probably because they're using similar assessments. We'll make it, we're just telling you here as staff, we'll try to make that work. And we think that that's a problem that can be solved by giving them a different form, by letting them report in the way that, that their assessment enables them to, and that we would probably, in our report back to the legislature, we would probably have to say, here's what we heard from charters that reported in 4 domains because you all approved their waivers, and here's what we heard from all of the other districts and state and schools. That's my understanding.
So we did we approved a replacement plan in a waiver that had them assess 4 domains, and therefore, and where we were specifically silent on the reporting, or is it the
That's correct.
logical presumption that since you only assess it 4, you only report 4?
Well, I do remember in all of those side-by-side versions that were repetitive, we always made the note in staff that this would be a consideration when it came to reporting. We did flag it for you, saying that if you approve the 4, you're going to have to at some point think about the reporting. So we always flagged it, and you made the decision.
To ignore it.
Well, no, I mean, just you saw it, and you approved the 4 domains. So now we're at that stage where we knew it would come around how do we report that. And so this is the first one that's come before you on that question.
One reporting period.
So is it the intent of the department to ultimately require everybody to report 6 domains?
It is the intent of the department to carry out the board policy that you all passed, which was 6 domains a year or so ago. If you also approve a waiver, it will be our intent to carry out your wishes on the waiver. And so if you tell us right now to, you still want reporting from the charter in question, then we will carry out that intent and we will allow them to report in 4 domains. You could also tell us otherwise. You could tell us, no, we want the charter to report in 6 domains. But as I feel strongly that our staff do work hard to carry out the intent that you all direct us.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Board Member McClellan.
Thank you for your patience, all of you. I know as the newest member of the board, I occasionally have questions, but I just want to make sure I'm confirming my understanding. There's no circumstance under which staff approves or denies a waiver. That is always the state board's decision. So we're really in the driver's seat here, and whatever hot seat we put them in terms of carrying out our marching orders is entirely our doing. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. Very good.
Steve? Mr. Durham?
Well, I will say a couple of things. One is I happen to, although I'm not going to vote again, I'm not going to vote in favor of the denial of the waiver. As a practical matter, I don't know that we can carry out our obligation to report to report to legislature if we don't require a report to us. So as a practical matter, I think the charter school request went too far. It probably should have been a request to report in the format of which they're testing. Would be, my guess is that's the mistake that they made. So I don't necessarily disagree with the motion that's been made, but I guess I'm going to have to request from Ms. Birdsall, Cordial, sorry, still a name behind. I want to see all the votes on that subject, and whether any vote or any and perhaps we probably had better go back through the tapes and see if there was a specific reference to 6 fields in the discussion, because I do not recall. I just, it may have been in an exhibit in front of us, and it could be that it was discussed that there were 6 fields, but that's news to me.
So, Mr. Durham, I believe that all the ones that we approved, all those school readiness assessments that we approved as a board have the 6.
And the assessments that we've approved by waiver have 4.
Apparently so.
And
The replacement plans.
replacement plans.
Not
Yeah.
all, yeah.
is there any evidence that somehow the 4 is inadequate, leads to children being deprived of something? Or?
It would be too soon to tell. I mean, this is very new for us, so this is about a year old that we've been collecting this.
Okay.
Would you repeat it again?
I'm ready to proceed with the vote.
Ms. Durham, Ms. Cordial, sorry, Steve.
Sorry.
Okay, so
The first
the
motion.
first part of the motion is what I'm taking a vote on right now. So to approve 22-7-1014 Paren 2A.
To approve their school readiness plan.
Correct, that is correct.
Assessment.
Thank you. Assessment. Board Member Durham.
Yes.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes.
Thank you. And then for the second part to deny, their request for the reporting waiver, because the board would like them to report the results of their assessments.
Actually, the law requires us to report.
Yeah.
And it's,
Law
yes.
is-
And it's required by law. Board Member Durham.
I think, if I may have a minute to explain my vote, I absolutely don't think the law requires them to report. Requires us to devise a method by which we can report
Just
to the
vote,
General
please.
Assembly. So,
Please,
just
sir.
for the record,
Okay,
no.
right, and can I have her read it again, please? The second part.
The second
The
part.
second part is to deny Boulder Valley School District RE2's request for waivers of CRS 22-7-1019, Pren 4, on behalf of Peak to Peak Charter School for the following reason, which is because the state board would like to report the results of their assessments
To the legislature.
to the legislature.
Okay. It's not because the state board would like them to, it's because that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
thank you.
Call the vote. God damn it. Okay. Board Member Durham.
No.
Board Member Flores.
Yes.
Board Member Goff.
Yes.
Board Member McClellan.
Yes.
Board Member Rankin.
Yes.
Board Member Schroeder.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion passes 5-1.
thank you very much.
And the other passed
Would you be
unanimously.
kind enough to check to see if we have any public comment? Yes.
It's a good fight, Steve.
It's kind of fun. Most, yeah.
SICK.
I need to fight as well.
Is there anybody?
It's hard. It's hard. I've discovered most people just can't do it. There's no like.
Thank you very much.
Over the years, I've been reasonably good at it.
I just need to learn.
At this time, we have public comment. Kate Molino. Okay. I need to remind you that we cannot accept public comment on quasi-judicial matters such as charter school appeals, disciplining matters, et cetera. So given what you've written, I'm afraid,
Oh, that I'm with Vega Collegiate Academy?
right, and that is a quasi-judicial matter that we voted on today and we will be looking at again. We may be looking at again shortly. Mr. Durham?
Point of order, ma'am, I don't, we dismissed that appeal. I don't believe it's pending.
What do you say, Counselor?
Yeah, we did.
I think that's one that you could cut both ways. It could technically come back, but it is not pending.
All right, come on.
Sorry.
You may be sorry, but
I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Catherine Mullins, and I'm the founder and executive director of Vega Collegiate Academy. We're a K-8 charter school located in Northwest Aurora, and we're actually the first standalone charter school to open as a Title I school in Northwest Aurora. We have almost a 100% refugee and immigrant population, and in just the 2 grades that we serve, we have 13 different languages. On the first day of school, almost 100% of our kindergartners spoke absolutely no English, not even the word hello. And since then, we've actually made significant growth. Within our 5th grade students, 100% of whom tested at least 1 year below grade level in both reading and math at the start of the year, have already grown over 1 year. And this was on January 8th was when we gave this interim assessment. And so that shows that more than 75% of our 5th graders are on the pathway to make more than 2 years of growth. Currently, we're located in a church basement. The building was built in the 40s. And we have convinced families that a facility does not make a school. But we're working hard to make sure that every child in our community not only has access to equity and education, so that every child can be prepared for a life of opportunity, knowing that the way our community is set up, college is that access point, and we want to make sure that every child, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their home language, has that opportunity. But we also believe that they should have the opportunity to go into a building that's beautiful and that's safe, and that I shouldn't have to convince parents, I know there's water dripping from the ceiling, I know half of our lights don't work, but I promise that we're going to get your child to and through a 4-year college of their choice. And so thank you. I invite each of you to please come visit our campus. We have not had one single behavior incident this year, and I only mention that because I think that's something that we're really proud of. It shows that 0 incidents of in-school suspension and 0 incidents of out-of-school suspension are pretty significant for a school halfway through. We have a positive culture where every child is engaged in learning, and I just invite you to our campus to see that. We'd love to have you there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. And I believe we are adjourned. See you March 14, if not before.